What happened to me?
You're special, Marcus. Don't ever forget that. Who are you?
We are talking about The Dark Within. Have you ever wondered what Evil Dead 2 would be like if it was a surreal psychological horror movie? If the answer is maybe, you may want to check out The Dark Within, directed and co-written by David Ryan Keith. So this is a kind of a low budget, weird film, for lack of a better word. So it focuses on this man called Marcus who has these kind of psychic abilities, and we see a prologue at the beginning of the movie that his father was involved in some type of experimentation to do with psychics. But there's some type of paranormal force that is involved here. Cut to him sort of 30 odd years later, and this guy's grown up. This kid is now grown up, and his parents have disappeared, and he's having some serious mental issues, and his therapist suggests he kind of go to the family cabin to sort of spend some time there to try and kind of unlock mysteries in his mind and all of this. But when he's there, he sees a variety of strange visions and kind of phenomena, including these kind of like these weird demonic skeletal looking creatures, all sorts of kind of weird stuff going on. They may well lead to him finding the answers about what happened to his parents. So let's discuss The Dark Within. So before I go into this one, I just want to point out that something that I have said on many a review of kind of lower budget indie movies. The people that are involved in this film clearly understand the message that they are trying to kind of get across. However, I always find in a lot of these movies is that the message gets lost when you are watching it as someone completely kind of nothing to do with it. And I always kind of use this example. I used to work in marketing, and I'd always test what I was working on something that was nothing to do with kind of the project to see if they would understand it. And I feel that films need to do this, especially kind of low budget films, because they clearly could have showed them to each other who's in the people involved with the films. Like, oh yeah, I get what you're trying to go for. But when you take it outside, you have this kind of outside perspective. I feel that you can point out things that don't work. It might seem obvious to you, but not necessarily to the person who hasn't seen what you're doing. So why do I say this? So this film, although it does have some areas of kind of flashes of brilliance here and there, it is a confusing jumble of a movie. What works first of all? Okay, so I mentioned the Evil Dead 2 because there is some visual kind of stylistic choices and almost like a bit of a homage, to be quite honest with you, from specifically the Evil Dead 2. The bit where kind of Ash is kind of going crazy in the kind of cabin and he's kind of, all this kind of weird stuff. You don't quite know if he's kind of losing it or if there really is kind of demonic forces there. It reminds me of that, and we have our kind of character Marcus kind of, freaking out, not quite sure if he's seeing is real or if it's kind of in his head or what, something else completely different. And then we have these kind of like kinetic kind of scenes where he's just kind of like reacting to things, and we keep getting, it's waking up from a dream, and then it's kind of like waking up from a dream within a dream, things like this. So it did kind of, and we have this kind of like, almost like possessed people scenes and kind of monster scenes that kind of come out of nowhere. And again, it just reminds me of the Evil Dead 2 specifically. And the kind of the makeup effects and things like that are actually pretty good. I actually kind of quite like Marcus as a character. He reminds me, he looks like he should be in Pirates of the Caribbean, I will say that. But, he's not as kind of, as charismatic as Bruce Campbell was as Ash, by no means necessary. But I didn't think he was necessarily a bad lead here. So visually it's kind of quite interesting. And their setup is interesting, although you don't really kind of know what's going on, which we'll come on to again. And, it's there. I think the elements are there to have an interesting movie. But when does this film go wrong for me? It just is all over the place. The problem is, I feel this movie is massively self-indulgent to the filmmakers, to the writers, Paul Flannery and the director-writer David Ryan Keith, because they just keep doing like, oh, it's just this. Well, this bit was an illusion, and it's the bulk of the film. I mean, it's top and tailed with some interesting stuff, but like the vast majority of the running time here is all these kind of like fake outs. You know, things like you don't know what's real, and you don't really know what's going on. You as an audience member are looking and thinking, I haven't got a clue what's going on here. So your interest levels start to wane. Now, this is where I feel the filmmakers need to kind of like, you know, look outside of their kind of like people involved in the film and kind of like ask people's opinions. Because I see this time and time again with especially with low budget films where they don't really have test screenings. Because, you know, people involved in the film, they're either, yes, man, yes, that's great, yes, great. Or they they understand what the end product is supposed to be, so they don't see kind of the wood to the trees, that sort of thing. Because as a kind of a viewer watching this for the first time, not knowing what anything this is, I just didn't know what I was watching, and I just kind of like, oh, you know, I'm switching off. So, you know, well, at the end of the movie, you can kind of piece together what's supposed to have happened, but you've kind of checked out by it by then. And it's just there's way too long here, kind of all this kind of like, this back and forth, is it real, is it, you know, is it not, you know, things that have happened, has that really happened? And it just spends I mean, we're talking like 80% of the running time of this movie is this, and it's just too much, and it's just too much going back and forth, and you know, giving you a jumble of cool looking images, but always seem to kind of like, that bit wasn't real, that bit might be real, we don't really know about this bit. And it's just, you just get thinking, I don't actually know what I'm watching. It's not really clear, to be honest with you, from the kind of even the beginning and then watching the prologue, what's actually gone on. And you know, when we have our young Marcus, who's our main character, looks nothing. The actor looks nothing like the kid that was cast for him in the beginning. I didn't even realise it was meant to be the same person first of all, because we have this kind of like blonde, sort of blue-eyed kid at the beginning of the movie, and then he transforms into this dark-haired guy with like brown eyes and stuff, and just like, oh, I didn't realise that was the same person. It was meant to be the same character. I thought it was this other guy who was also in the kind of the epilogue. So there's some kind of, it doesn't do a good enough job here of kind of like guiding the audience on what it's meant to be a narrative. And I get that it's supposed to be a surreal kind of like psychological horror movie with lots of twists and stuff. Ironically, there's kind of like some really obvious things that are going to happen as well. I'll give you an example. So we see a scene where Marcus picks up a knife, and it's a big deal. He shows you them picking up this knife, and then this kind of like this creature comes to him, and I just thought he's going to stab the creature, and then it's going to cut to someone that isn't the creature, it's someone he knows, and sure enough, that's exactly what happens. So this movie is both kind of like massively kind of like jumbled and confusing, but at the same time it has a few kind of like typical kind of like cliches that you kind of see in movies as well. I don't think it's necessarily a bad acted film. I think the guy who plays Marcus doesn't have a lot to do with it. He's mainly acting on his own. There are a few scenes where he acts with other people, but I didn't really, you know, he's just kind of like pulling faces a lot of the time. And then just a couple of scenes that involve his parents. I've got to say the acting was pretty poor by them. They're not in it a huge amount, to be fair. I think the acting by the psychologist was pretty good, although she's way too glammed up for my, you know, I thought she looks like a stripper. But anyway, it's just, it has some interesting ideas, and it has some great visuals, and the what could have been, I feel, an interesting narrative, but it just kind of squanders it of being way too kind of self-indulgent, way too kind of jumbled, and spends far too long trying to be surprising and having all these twists and turns for its own good, and ends up becoming unwatchable because of it. So a real kind of mess. I've got to be honest with you, I was really struggling to watch this one. But there's some good elements, but I had to give it a below average mark because just did not feel that the narrative was strong at all here. So I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I shall look forward to you next time. Bye for now.